Before getting started, a quick warning that this video will contain spoilers up to the end of episode 8. It begins like all great season finales, with the eviscerated halves of the Immortal's body thudding to the ground. As Omni-Man tells Mark that they need to talk, Mark's head begins pounding and his vision blurs as he comes to the only logical conclusion: someone took control of his dad's mind. Mark tries to beat the invader out of his father's mind, only to be repelled. With a scary amount of calm, Omni-Man tells his son to stop and that it really is just him. With a sigh of resignation, Omni-Man tells Mark the truth about Viltrum. While their civilization was perfect, it came at a heavy price. A long and bloody conflict, or difficult process, was carried out to cull the weak from the strong. In total, half of Viltrum's inhabitants were slaughtered, the remaining half were the ones strong enough to survive. From this, a new Viltrum Empire rose and spread throughout the galaxy, eliminating all potential threats to their omnipresent rule. Omni-Man, along with every other of his kind, was born and raised to conquer planets. Eventually, the number of worlds under Viltrumite control began catching up to the number of living Viltrumites. Because of this, their most trusted officers were each tasked with weakening and preparing a planet for conquering by themselves. Omni-Man was given Earth. With the truth laid bare, Omni-Man goes on to inform his son that they must now prepare Earth to join the Viltrum Empire. The crushing weight of the revelation isn't lost on Mark, who begins shedding tears. When accused of lying, Omni-Man goes on to explain that he couldn't tell Mark the truth, not until he was sure that his son was also a Viltrumite. To say that Mark was incredulous would be like saying it rains during a monsoon. He denies everything, asserting to his father, "You love me, you love Mom, I know you do." Omni-Man deflects the statement, saying, "Do you have any idea how long we live? The older we get, the slower we age." Telling Mark that he'll live for thousands of years and that everyone he knows and loves will be gone before he looks so much as 30. Omni-Man goes on to reason with his son, pointing out all the benefits to Earth and its people if they join the Viltrum Empire. Global peace, an end to world hunger, and technological and medical advancements beyond imagination. It all sounded so nice, but then Omni-Man just had to bring up Debbie. "I do love your mother," he said, "but she's more like a pet to me." If Viltrumites are supposed to display high intelligence, they definitely sent a bad representative to show it to Earth. Mark does not respond well to the analogy regarding his mom. Omni-Man goes on to tell his son that this is the only way, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Don't touch me," Mark said, as he recoiled away. "This is insane. What do you think is gonna happen? That I'm gonna go enslave my friends for a bunch of aliens I've never met? This is my life, these are my people." Omni-Man argues back, claiming they both have a responsibility to Viltrum. Mark cuts his father off, making his disdain for the alien empire all too clear, saying, "This is my home and I won't let you destroy it." Omni-Man gives his son an ultimatum, one last chance to join. He says, "I can't let you interfere." Mark responds by raising his fists in preparation. When Omni-Man shut his eyes, he was calm. He stayed calm as a last pair of words left his mouth. So be it. In the next instant, Omni-Man's eyelids snapped open, revealing a furious intent on the eyes that were momentarily concealed beneath. Without any other warning, Omni-Man slams a flying right cross into Mark's chest, sending him reeling. Before Mark can recover, Omni-Man appears behind him, delivering a haymaker to send the younger Viltrumite sailing on a collision course with the Earth, recreating the end results of his first few flight lessons. Omni-Man tries to convince Mark to stand down and realize that resistance is pointless. Mark refuses to back down, letting fly a fist of his own, only for it to be caught in Omni-Man's blood-soaked hand. For a moment, it's quiet, as father and son stare each other down. Mark unwillingly breaks eye contact as his arm is twisted. In quick execution, Omni-Man flings Mark skyward, then catches him by the ankle, slamming him into the ground before hurling him miles away. With a resigned expression, Omni-Man watches his son disappear from view. He breathes a heavy sigh, then gives chase. Cecil and Debbie, still in their underground bunker, are monitoring the physical disagreement as it unfolds. Cecil apologizes to Debbie for having to hear her husband treat her with such disregard. In that moment, she is more concerned about the potential for her husband and son to kill each other. A nearby agent informs Cecil that the two Viltrumites have begun to slow down near the city of Chicago. Cecil orders the agent to scramble 2 jets to lend aid, not because he thinks they could actually kill Omni-Man, instead hoping to distract the filicidal super long enough for Mark to figure out a better plan. The new Guardians of the Globe are also watching the fight, and although they want to help, they all agree that the fight is beyond their capabilities, and that they should stay put per Cecil's directive. Eve arrives at Guardians HQ to receive a brief, crude, albeit accurate summary of the ongoing spectacle from Rex. Arriving in the suburban outskirts of Chicago, Mark manages to halt his momentum. In a matter of seconds, Omni-Man was upon him. Mark tries to yell some sense into his father, telling him that it's not too late. Omni-Man disagrees and expresses the sentiment by knocking Mark around like a tetherball until being interrupted by the arrival of Cecil's jets. He tells Mark it's right to pity them, but wrong to value them over your own kind, before launching him towards the ground below. Seeing a window of opportunity, the 2 jets let loose a volley of missiles, scoring a direct hit. Being more annoyed than hurt by the attack, Omni-Man darts after one of the pilots, tearing a hole through the jet's hull. Nearby, Mark emerges from a crater to see the pilot still strapped into his ejection seat as he accelerates towards Earth. Mark intercepts the pilot and, after a close call with a sudden deployment of a defective parachute, manages to save the man's life. Moments later, Omni-Man arrives and crushes the man's head in his hand, giving as much thought to the action as someone stepping on a rather annoying ant. This is the first time that Mark sees his father callously kill anyone, and it leaves him momentarily stunned. Omni-Man nearly catches the other pilot, but he's knocked off course by Mark. In a handful of words, the younger Viltrumite manages to both accuse and question his father's murderous act. Omni-Man responds with a question of his own, asking Mark what difference it makes for that man to die today instead of 50 years from now when he's old. Mark's simple response: he'd have a life. Omni-Man, feeling that he has yet to drive his point home on humanity's insignificance, drives his fist into Mark's face with incredible force, launching him on a direct path with downtown Chicago. The city streets are bustling with life and activity as people carry out their daily routines. Mark's arrival brings the illusion of safety and normalcy crashing down as he barrels through 2 nearby buildings before tearing up the street that was so peaceful just moments before. Finally getting his bearings, Mark digs his hands and heels into the asphalt, grinding his motion to a halt. All in all, he looks to be in pretty good shape for having just been a man-sized projectile. At the sound of nearby panicked screams, he looks up to see a terrible amount of devastation. His moment of guilt over those killed is temporarily halted by the impending collapse of one of the 2 buildings he crashed through on his entry. Forestalling the inevitable, Mark zooms towards the building, bracing himself against it, the sudden stop in motion causing a simultaneous shattering of every window in the structure. Mark sees a mother and her child in one of the rooms and does everything he can to save their lives and prevent the building from toppling over. Strength alone isn't enough, however, as the building falls apart all around him, crashing down onto the streets and people below. Still holding on to the woman's arm that he grabbed to prevent from falling, Mark emerges from the rubble, looking down to see that her arm was all that remained. As Omni-Man arrives on the scene, reality finally sets in for Mark as he questions his father how he could possibly do something so terrible. The older Viltrumite blames Mark for the outcome and makes it clear that continuing to resist will only result in more death. To Omni-Man, human life is worthless because of how relatively short it is compared to his own. Mark takes the opposing, more human view, seeing a life that is short as one worth living and making the most of. Mark asks his father if he thinks his mom's life is worthless. Omni-Man responds, in the grand scheme of things, yes, sending an emotional knife through Debbie's heart as she hears the cold declaration. Shouting liar, Mark launched into a fresh assault. With renewed rage and vigor, Mark lands a series of strikes against his father. Omni-Man eventually catches his son and says that he is telling his son the truth for the first time in his life, then doles out a headbutt that sends Mark down into the subway system below. Omni-Man sees fit to give Mark another object lesson in the fragile nature of human life, holding him up to an oncoming subway. Mark's body, with Omni-Man's grasp keeping it firmly in place, turns the entire subway into an industrial meat grinder, brutally killing just about every person on board. In the wrecked aftermath, Omni-Man reaffirms that these people are meaningless. He concedes to Mark that he was happy on Earth for a time, but that his true loyalties lie with Viltrum and not this pathetic excuse for a civilization. This declaration spurs on another charge from Mark, but it appears that Omni-Man is just about fed up with playing games. Dodging the attack, Omni-Man launches Mark back out of the subway and into the sky above. Omni-Man asserts that Mark doesn't know who he truly is and what he's capable of. He makes a promise to burn the planet down before he spends another minute living among these animals. Having some fight left to give, Mark rears a fist back, landing a blow so strong that it creates a miniature shockwave as it contacts with Omni-Man's face. It didn't so much as garner a twitch from the older Viltrumite. Omni-Man launches into a devastating combo of strikes, knocking Mark around like a pinball on Saturday at the arcade. The assault is paused as Omni-Man admits he was wrong to raise Mark as a human, that it's made him soft and weak. He lets Mark know that it's about time for his true Viltrumite education to begin. With that, he launches toward the sea, Mark in tow. Back at Guardians HQ, the idling heroes finally decide to act. Samson reminds them all that while they can't fight Omni-Man, they can go save lives in the aftermath of Chicago. Rudy, still acting a bit like a robot, urges them to follow Cecil's orders. The rest of the Guardians disregard that notion, and Monster Girl reminds Rudy that he's not a robot anymore before they all head off. Omni-Man crashes through a cruise ship with Mark before plunging into the sea below. Mark attempts to land a half-hearted punch against his father's face, but it's clear that all of the fight has gone out of him by this point. Omni-Man slams Mark into the briny sea floor and then watches as he floats limply in the water. He might have drowned there if not for his father's hand dragging him back out of the ocean, through the cruise ship and into the sky. With Olympic grace, Omni-Man throws his son into a snow-covered mountain, startling the inhabitants of a town settled at its basin. He arrives at his son's side and delivers a punch to the younger super's chest that sends a shockwave through the nearby mountain range, resulting in an avalanche of epic proportions. The crushing white wave swept up Mark along with everyone else caught in its path of devastation. Omni-Man locates and pulls his son from the debris. When asked if he's had enough, a beaten and bloodied Mark responds with a vow to stop his father. This prompts another devastating punch from Omni-Man, sending Mark soaring into a different nearby mountain. With frustration clearly evident in his tone and countenance, Omni-Man reminds Mark that he's doing all this for nothing, that Earth will be better off if it joins the Viltrum Empire. When Mark asks what will happen should they resist, Omni-Man responds that Mark and he are there to make sure that they don't resist by showing the futility of such a gesture, that they can be part of something bigger or die. Mark, with more conviction than is justified, says "I won't let you," earning another brutal blow to the face for his courage. Realizing that Mark will not yield until he is dead, Omni-Man begins dealing out a series of blows that would eventually kill his only son. In what seems like more of an act of self-delusion than bluster, Omni-Man asks what difference 17 more years makes, and that he can always start again, make another kid. The savage series of punches knocks several of Mark's teeth from his face. Seeing his son with missing teeth reminds Omni-Man of a time when Mark had a similar number of the pearly whites as a child, during a baseball game. At this point, Omni-Man was still jaded by all his years of existence and saw these games as a waste of time. It was Debbie that broke through to him, pointing out the look of happiness and determination on Mark's face, and that such an eager attitude towards life is lost as people grow older. She goes on to assert that humans live to witness and share in the joy of their children, and that is what humanity is all about, what makes it so special and worth protecting. Whether or not Omni-Man truly believed that all of humanity was special, he definitely formed a rather human bond with his son in that moment, as hard as he tried to deny it. Looking at his son's disfigured face, Omni-Man launches into a diatribe asking why his son would make him do this, that he's fighting just to watch everyone around him die. He says everything and everyone you know will be gone. What will you have after 500 years? With tears welling up in his swollen shut eyes, Mark replies, "You, Dad, I'd still have you." The hard look on Omni-Man's face softened by several degrees at that. Looking at his hands, soaked in the blood of his own son, Omni-Man realizes that he can't do it. As alien a concept as it might be to a Viltrumite, Omni-Man cares about his son and can't kill him off, even if that refusal means defying the Viltrum Empire. Launching into space, Omni-man flees, leaving behind a single tear. A moribund Mark is rescued where he was left by Cecil and a GDA medical team. Debbie is there too, heartbroken at the sight of her son. The devastating news coverage of downtown Chicago brings tears to William's eyes and a glass of whiskey to Art's lips. As the Muller twins burn down their surely compromised hideout, they're ambushed by an insurmountable number of GDA agents, surrendering to arrest. Meanwhile, the on-site newscaster in Chicago reports the cost in lives to be incalculable. Luckily, the Guardians of the Globe and Adam Eve are on site to help rescue survivors from the wreckage. Humanity as a whole struggles to fathom what brought the vicious attack to an end, and only hopes that the danger has truly passed. Mark wakes up in a familiar place to see his mother standing vigil. With a heavy sigh, she puts on a brave face and tells Mark how proud she is of him. However, the pain is still fresh for Mark, and he begins breaking into tears as soon as he recalls what events led up to this point. She leaves the room to let him rest, holding her composure just long enough to get out of sight before breaking down into tears of her own. Cecil interrupts the moment to inform Debbie that she and Mark will be completely taken care of. The official story is that famous author Nolan Grayson died tragically during a gas leak explosion from the house across his street. Nolan's books always sold well, but his death will bring about a significant rise in sales, and that money will go to Debbie and Mark. Cecil even set up a fake funeral, sending proxies of Mark and Debbie to attend. Cecil admits that he feels responsible for not catching on to Omni-man's true intentions sooner, and that he intends to make things as right as they can be in recompense. The Guardians return to HQ after a long and tiring day of rescue work. Seeing the bloodstain from the previous Guardians, Rex gets to his feet. Grabbing a bucket of water and cloth, he walks over and begins washing the blood from the wall. Before long, Samson and the rest of the team come around, aiding Rex in his efforts to wash away the past. A new day rises over Chicago. William, Amber, and Eve are all despondent. Mark continues his recovery, stalwart mother at his side, and the Guardians are finally acting and training as a team. Art is hemming away, contemplating how the friend he knew in Omni-man could possibly have been nothing more than a lie. William and Eve go to see if Mark is home at the same time. William unwittingly reveals that Mark is invincible and Omni-man is his dad, and is quickly relieved when Eve admits she already knew. 2 weeks after the fight with his dad, Mark finally recovers to some form of normal health. Cecil insists that he rests a little bit longer, but Mark wants answers about his dad. Cecil informs Mark that Debbie heard everything Omni-man said. He does this in a mysteriously white room. The room is apparently equipped to give off a specific frequency of light that no American is capable of seeing, thanks to a chemical inhibitor laced in the country's supply of drinking water. It is at this point that we also see the recovered body of the Immortal, a dilation test revealing that he is in fact still alive. Cecil goes on to inform Mark that Omni-man left the solar system, leaving a vacancy in the role of the world's sole protector. Mark isn't keen on the idea of filling that role, but Cecil won a small victory in at least giving Mark the idea to mull over. Mark and Debbie are escorted back home by Cecil. Looking at a photo of their family, Mark reflects on the series of events from the previous half year, from the moment he began getting his powers. The double meaning behind his father's words becomes evident as he remembers from this new perspective. If you really want to do what I do, you have to be prepared for anything. This is the beginning of a long journey for you and me. Along the way, you're gonna need to do things that you don't want to or might not think you can do. You're a Viltrumite. We have responsibilities that normal humans don't. Mark also reflects on his own words. I want to do what you do, I want to be just like you. As well as his father's response to those words. You will be, son, you will be. After this revelation, Mark goes to inform his mom that he's gonna order some pizza, asking if she wants some, walking in to see her crying on her bed. The doorbell rings, yanking Mark from his rumination. It's Amber, and she wants to get back together after seeing that Mark was lied to by his dad. He goes along with it, grasping at any source of comfort in these dark times. William and Eve show up only moments later, expressing their relief to see he's alright. Amber walks into view, and Mark reassures them all that they're all in the know regarding him and his father's secret identities. Mark then springs the idea of going out to eat, and the group of friends head off. Art is working on another glass of whiskey when Debbie lets herself in, seeking some type of commiseration from the only other person that could come close to understanding the amount of pain and betrayal she is feeling. Even after all that Omni-man did and said, neither could accept nor believe that the former hero and man they both knew was nothing more than a character put on for show. The two share drinks as the night stretches on. At their local burger mart, Mark and his friends are struggling to find a discussion topic that doesn't involve the recent tragedy. The awkward silence is interrupted by a phone call from Cecil. Even though Mark was initially hesitant to be Earth's defender, he nevertheless answers the call to action, flying off into space to face an impending threat. In Mark's absence, Eve decides to lay her cards on the table, revealing herself as Adam Eve to both William and Amber. This leads to a funny nod from the show as William exclaims, "What? Oh my god, I see it now. You can make doubles of yourself," mixing her up with duplicate and shining a light on the inexplicable obliviousness of the mundane characters to the obvious superheroes living amongst them. Up in space, Mark rears back, ready to lay into who or whatever dares threaten Earth. It turns out to be Alan the alien, bearing a message of warning for Invincible about the Viltrumite living on his planet. After a long explanation to Alan about how Mark is also a Viltrumite and that the Viltrumite on Earth was his father, Alan contemplates the strangeness of what he's been told. A Viltrumite leaving their post is unheard of, and they would sooner destroy an entire planet rather than give it up. Alan knows this from experience as his home world suffered such a destructive fate for resisting the Viltrum Empire. Alan reveals that the coalition of planets is organizing a counter-movement against the Viltrum Empire, and that a Viltrumite that is not loyal to the Empire could be exactly what they need to turn the tides in their favor. Hearing that the terrible events on Earth over the last few months are just a smaller part of the big picture makes it all feel more manageable to Mark, helping him cope. Alan goes on to warn Mark that once the Viltrumites learn about what happened, they'll come to Earth to finish the job that Omni-man couldn't. Mark assures Alan that he'll be ready and waiting for them when they do. Alan asks what the plan is in the meantime, and we get treated to a montage of all the threats that lay in store for Invincible to face. The Sequids have all but completely overrun the Martians. The Muller twins, though back in custody, are already scheming up some sort of escape. It turns out that Omni-man didn't completely wipe out the Flaxons, they recovered, and are planning to strike back at the world where their near destroyer first came from. Doc Seismic somehow survived his bath in lava and is raising an army of magma golems. Titan, now sitting atop his throne, is approached by a mysterious old man with a mechanical jaw. As Titan summons his rocky exterior, the old man calls forth a dragon spirit to lunge at the tough super. We also get a reminder that Battle Beast is still at large, doling out death to anyone he deems worthy of it. Even Cecil may pose a threat, as he augments his army of military-grade reanimen. Blissfully ignorant to all of these threats, Mark answers Alan's question saying, "Finish high school, I guess." Alan responds with, "Oh, alright, good, sounds good. What's high school?" And that is the end of this episode and the end of Season 1. Now this video has dragged out long enough, and I'll be doing an entire video dedicated solely to reviewing the entire Season 1 of Invincible, so I'll just give a very brief review here. While most of this episode was amazing in terms of wrapping up the season, there were some minor hiccups that bring the score down to a 9 out of 10 for me. I'll be going into more detail in my full review video. If you want to be notified for when that video comes out, be sure to subscribe. You're also helping me feed my cat, her name's Marshmallow. Have a great day. If you're here today, have a great Friday and a great weekend, and as always, thanks for watching.